The narrator explains that life is full of moments that seem ordinary, moments so quiet and unremarkable that we almost never notice them. Yet sometimes, within those silent moments, the world can tilt entirely, and fate can hinge on a single, almost invisible choice. This is the story of Ethan, a man whose life had always moved in invisible rhythms, unnoticed by co-workers, strangers, and even friends. A man who existed without leaving marks on the world, who woke, worked, walked, and slept with the same quiet consistency day after day. He was not unhappy. He was not sad in the dramatic way novels describe. He was numb, resigned, existing in a routine that demanded neither attention nor passion. And so, on a gray evening, as the sun dipped behind clouds and the city below moved with its usual indifferent pace, Ethan descended to the subway platform, joining a slow-moving crowd of commuters whose faces were blank with habit. The air smelled faintly of dust and metal, and the hum of distant trains filled the space with a hollow rhythm. Ethan's eyes were unfocused, his thoughts elsewhere, when a tiny, almost invisible shift in the scene caught his attention. A phone lying face up near the edge of the platform, glowing faintly and vibrating softly, as if it were waiting for someone to notice it. At first, Ethan barely registered it. Someone would pick it up, someone always does. He looked around. No one was near it. The platform was quieter than usual. A small, silent space had opened up, and in that emptiness, the phone seemed to pulse in the dim light. And then he imagined two versions of the next few seconds. In the first, he steps away, lets the phone sit, boards his train, and goes home, returning to his invisible, quiet life. The image felt familiar, safe, comfortable. The other version required engagement, picking it up, speaking, acting, stepping into someone else's moment. That image felt heavy, demanding, and uncertain. Ethan hesitated. The seconds stretched, long enough to feel as though the universe was holding its breath. The narrator explains that 5 seconds can be enough to alter the course of someone's life, even if the one making the choice believes it will change nothing. And then, almost automatically, Ethan reached down, lifted the phone, slid it into his pocket, and convinced himself it was trivial, meaningless, just another unremarkable movement in a life defined by small, quiet gestures. The train arrived, and he stepped inside as the doors closed behind him with a hollow click, and the moment seemed over, but it was only beginning. That night, the phone vibrated relentlessly, filling Ethan's apartment with quiet insistence, each pulse carrying a sense of urgency he tried to ignore. He placed it on the table and cooked dinner, eating in silence, the hum of the refrigerator and the distant traffic in the background. Eventually, exhaustion took him, and he fell asleep, though his rest was shallow, broken by fragmented dreams and the persistent hum of the device. Morning arrived with the soft gray light of winter, diffused and gentle, and Ethan moved through his routine almost automatically, brushing teeth, making coffee, preparing for the day. On the television, the news anchor spoke casually until a phrase caught him like a knife. A missing person last seen on the subway platform the night before. The words hung in the air. He froze, staring at the screen, the memory of the phone vibrating in his pocket overwhelming the numbness he had carried for years. The narrator slows here, emphasizing that guilt does not always arrive as panic. Sometimes it comes as awareness, a quiet, relentless pressure. Ethan's heart began to beat differently. The world continued on around him. His neighbors left for work. The bus rumbled past. A dog barked in the distance. But for him, time seemed elastic, stretched by the knowledge that 5 seconds on a platform had already shaped someone else's fate. At the office, he went through the motions, answering emails and attending meetings, but every glance at his phone reminded him of the quiet responsibility he had assumed without permission. The weight of the choice he had made, or had failed to fully consider, followed him like a shadow, unremarked by anyone else, but impossible to ignore for him. By evening, he could no longer postpone the question forming in his mind. What should he do? The narrator emphasizes that the real choice was not simply whether to return the phone. It was whether to acknowledge his role in the world, to step from invisibility into accountability. Returning the phone meant exposure, explanation, responsibility. Keeping it meant safety, silence, anonymity. Both paths were heavy. Both paths would leave marks he could not undo. And as he held the phone in his hands, watching its soft screen glow in the dim light of his apartment, he realized that life is often measured not in the grand gestures of heroism, but in small, quiet decisions, the consequences of which ripple silently through the lives of others. Finally, after pacing the apartment and weighing the silent pressure of responsibility, Ethan left his apartment and returned to the station. The streets were dim, wet from a light drizzle that blurred the city lights. His coat hung loosely from his shoulders, the weight of the phone in his pocket heavier than its physical presence. At the platform, he paused, noticing how ordinary it seemed, how easily a life-altering moment could appear mundane. The narrator draws attention to this. Life often hides the pivotal instant in plain sight, expecting no recognition. He approached the edge carefully and waited. Minutes passed. No one appeared to claim the phone. The ambient noise of the subway, trains rumbling underground, footsteps echoing, announcements crackling over speakers, made the waiting almost surreal. And then he handed the phone to a station employee, explaining briefly that it had been left behind. There was no applause, no recognition, only the mundane efficiency of a person doing their job. Ethan stepped back onto the platform, alone, feeling simultaneously lighter and heavier, because the action had not been dramatic, but the choice had shifted him internally. He realized that courage is not measured by attention or acknowledgement, but by the quiet act of presence when no one is watching. Days passed, and life resumed its routine, but Ethan was changed in subtle ways. He noticed more details in the faces of strangers, paused longer before speaking, considered consequences more deeply. The narrator explains that one moment, one choice, can awaken awareness that has lain dormant for years, that the ripples of action may be invisible, but they shape how we perceive ourselves and the world. At home, he glanced at his reflection in the mirror, seeing for the first time someone who could matter, someone whose presence, though quiet, could alter outcomes. He understood the full weight of responsibility, not as punishment, but as consciousness. The subway platform would continue to be ordinary to everyone else. Trains would continue their endless rhythm. People would remain absorbed in their own lives. But Ethan had learned that even the smallest action could ripple outward. And the narrator closes gently, allowing the listener to linger with the truth. Courage is quiet. Impact is often invisible. And the world notices, even when it does not acknowledge, every choice we make in those silent 5 seconds.